Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It's Julene with Jovi Star Astrology. I hope you guys are doing well. We are going to talk about the very first full moon of 2024, which is happening today in the sign of Leo. And I will pull up the chart and we can take a look at all of the planets in action and what's going on with this full moon. But first, I want to thank you for being here. If you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel, like the video, share the video, and comment on the video. That helps as I grow the channel. I super appreciate all of you being here. And as you've probably noticed, if you've been here before, I have a little bit different setup here. So I decided, as Pluto is moving into Aquarius, and that I would learn some new software and see if I could create a little bit more pizzazz in my video presentation on YouTube. So I'm learning how to use this software. I've been working on it for the last couple of weeks. A little bit challenging, a little bit of frustration, but that's kind of like what's going on for a lot of us here with all of these planets in Capricorn, right? So I'm determined to learn it, but I would appreciate it if you would bear with me a little bit if there are any glitches as I learn to use this software. So, well, we can just get right into it. But, maybe before that, we'll talk a little bit about Pluto's entrance into Aquarius, which happened this past Saturday. Pluto entered the sign of Aquarius again, right? It entered into Aquarius last March and spent a few months there until it retrograded back into Capricorn. And now Pluto has again ingressed into the sign of Aquarius, where it will stay for most of the year. We will have it a little bit of wrapping up to do in the sign of Capricorn, because it will move back into Capricorn during its retrograde to the 29th degree in September of this year. And then when it moves back into, when Pluto goes direct in November and moves back into the sign of Aquarius, it will be there for 20 years. So this is the beginning of a very long conversation about Pluto and what it represents going into the sign of Aquarius. So this is a really good time to reflect back on what you observed while Pluto was in the sign of Capricorn. And, as I've been asked a lot of questions about what Pluto going into the sign of Aquarius means for individual people, it means for the collective. And there are some things that are quite obvious. And we can look back at history when Pluto was in Aquarius over 200 years ago, and we experienced the American Civil War and the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution, and all of the things that are in our history books that we can draw from. But when it comes to a big change in our collective, like Pluto entering into the sign of Aquarius, we really have to think about the past. So the past history, but also our own individual past history and our most recent past, meaning what did we observe, feel, or how did things change within our traditions and our work life and our structures, the structures that we rely on in society during Pluto's transit in the sign of Capricorn. I read a quote by a man named Soren Kierkegaard, and it kind of summed up the way that I've been thinking about it. And the quote is, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forward." So a lot of reflection. I think this time between now and September, when Pluto goes back into Capricorn for a little bit, is a really good time to sort of pay attention to what had gone on in our lives for the last 15 years since since Pluto was in the sign of Capricorn, as we move into this new phase of Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. I think that's a good way of looking at it. And, many of us won't feel anything right away. We'll just be observing what's going on in the collective. And I think we've all been doing that, right? Especially if we're interested in things like astrology and just human life and what's going on in general. I think we've noticed a lot of changes already. And we've been in somewhat, if not been forced to be in a place of just being an observer. And maybe now it's time that we start taking action towards making a difference, right, within our groups and within our communities. That's one way of looking at some changes that could be coming with Pluto entering in the sign of Aquarius. And technology is definitely one of them. And so again, that's why I thought, well, it'd be a good time for me to start learning some new technology so that so I can join in with the rest of the collective that's out there, just sort of zipping through new technology. It's like the younger generation just seems to be just, they have no problem with it, right? Some of us, me included, it's a little bit more challenging, but we have to find a way to move forward. And looking back, like what can help us do that, right? So it definitely represents change for us individually, and change for us in our communities and within our groups and just society in general. I'm going to pull up the chart here, and we can take a look at what's going on with this full moon. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so I can see. Okay, so you see we have the full moon in Leo. And everybody knows I like to draw on the charts. With this new software, I have not quite figured out I figured out how to draw on the chart, but for some reason it won't project out onto a recording or live, which is interesting. And I've messed with it a little bit and I can't seem to figure it out quite yet. So I'm not going to be able to draw on the screen like I normally do, which is really probably more of a sacrifice for me, I would think, than maybe it is for the rest of you, because I really like to be able to do that. But I haven't been able to figure it out. So if any of you have any ideas on how to get a drawing tool to actually show the output, drop it down in the comment and let me know. All right, so let's look at all of the different aspects of this full moon. We have the full moon over here in Leo, and we'll take a look at the Sabian symbol for 5 degrees of Leo, but it's sitting here at 5 degrees of Leo. And this is happening today, January the 25th, 2024. Where I'm at, it's actually already occurred. It was 10:58 a.m. here in Phoenix, Arizona. So on the East Coast, we're talking 1:58. And if you are elsewhere in the world, please check your time zone to see where this is happening for you. But we have the moon here in the sign of Leo, and we have the sun over here conjunct Pluto. Which is a pretty, that gives this full moon a little bit of oomph, right? Pluto uncovers. Pluto can make us feel pressured, feel like there's something kind of controlling us or pushing us in a direction potentially, or within a group. So the opposition here between the moon and the sun an opposition, right? Creates a tension that needs to be balanced. And that's what a full moon is. It's sort of the culmination of the period prior to events. And now we're at a place where, something has to change, right? Something has to change or be balanced out. And cycles, moon cycles, this particular one goes back to 2 weeks ago when we had new moon in the beginning of January. But we can also look back at cycles even prior to that. And the last new moon that we had in Leo would have been over the summertime in August, I believe it was. I took a look at it, but I don't have the exact date. And that would have been during the time that we were having all of the concentrated transits of planets in the sign of Leo, including that Venus retrograde in the sign of Leo. So we could be talking about the culmination of a cycle from the summer until now. So about 6 months ago. So think about what was going on in your life back then. So there's an opposition. There's something that we have to balance out or reconcile here when it comes to Leo, which is our expression and our creativity. The moon represents our mood, represents the collective mood. It represents our emotions, obviously, and our immediate environment. And the sun is representing like where we want to go, right? It's like, what do we see? Where do we want to go? What is being highlighted in the within Aquarius, which represents the collective or groups of some sort. And Aquarius also represents the need to potentially break away and individuate. It can be a little bit of a feeling of, kind of feeling antsy, wanting to rebel, just sort of wanting to get things going. And this can be on either side for us, right? It just kind of depends on what's going on in your chart with Leo, what's going on in your chart with Aquarius, like what placements do you have in those areas of your chart and what's going on in your life. We have a square to this full moon to the planet Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. And Jupiter wants growth and expansion. It wants expression. And Jupiter can very much move things along very quickly. When we're talking about a square aspect, and we're talking about our emotional being and, our vision of where we're going, and the tension that opposition creates with the square to Jupiter, it can make whatever situation is going on in your life get really, really big, really, really quick, right? It can get out of control. It can be blown out of proportion. And that can be positive or it can be challenging. It just depends on what's going on with your life. But that makes this full moon pretty dynamic in terms of which direction it's going to go and, how big the issues surrounding this full moon are going to get, right? Jupiter and Taurus, it does. Taurus likes to be comfortable, right? And it likes to feel good, and it wants to grow something tangible. Earth sign, right? Ruled by Venus. And so this could have a lot to do with how we're feeling in our bodies and how comfortable and secure we're feeling in our environments. And the growth that maybe we have been working on or the growth that we want to see coming that may have been moving a little bit slow. Jupiter has been retrograde up until recently, and now it is direct and sort of hovering around these degrees in the earlier part of in the earlier degrees of Taurus. And so we might be feeling like, there's time, it's time for a change. There's time for, it's time to start expressing things, changing things, growing things, moving things into a direction that is going to feel better, right? And sometimes situations come along that sort of push our buttons or force us into making a change. And I think we have some, a square is challenging, but it does force some kind of action. I think it's just how we choose to use that and how we choose to take action that's going to make the difference here, right? But a square to Pluto makes this very dynamic, and it makes it very probable that something is going to potentially open up or move forward or get blown up very, very big or grow very, very fast, right? With Jupiter moving direct. We have other things here at play. So let's take a look at what else is going on other than like the obvious fact that Pluto is conjunct the sun here. So this could potentially feel like something very, very intense. It just depends. Like I can kind of see this, if we're talking about Aquarius, this is just an example. So we've got Aquarius, groups, people, the community, organization, conjunct Pluto. And then you've got the moon down here in Leo that just wants to be expressive, and wants to have fun and be comfortable too in a lot of ways. But Leo is a fixed fire sign, so it can be very, very hot, right? It can be a very let's just say it's a heated situation, but let's just say that somebody is working from home, right? We're going to use the moon, like moon is home. Somebody's working from home. They might be very happy there. Sometimes Leo can get very comfortable where it's at. It's a fixed sign. It doesn't want to move. So let's just say we're working from home and our company says, everybody needs to come back to work. The group needs to come back together, and you're feeling pressure to do that, right? Pressure. You've got to move. Something's got to grow. You're being given information or direction on what it is that you need to do in your job, right? And maybe you've got something to say about that, or maybe you've got some feelings around that, or maybe you're feeling controlled by that directive or by that group that you're involved in. And maybe you don't feel a part of it. You feel apprehensive about it, right? This conversation, a situation like that could turn into something very intense, right? It could turn into something very intense. Let's say if it's not something that you want to do, or you don't feel like you have a choice, right? There could be an opposition with something like this. This kind of an opposition could also represent something like peer pressure, right? Pressure to join a group, or pressure to make a decision on what you're going to do. Are you going to spend money? Are you going to move forward on something? Like, there's something here where maybe there is a choice at hand when it comes to what you want to do for fun and pleasure, and how you want to express yourself, and what it is that you love to do, and what it is that others want you to do, or what you're required to do or obligated to do within a group. That's an example of a situation, a potential situation within a full moon like this. Other things and so we could be feeling that, right? Especially if you have placements in Leo or Aquarius in the early degrees, 0 to 5 degrees. Something could come up that really is forcing you to make very quick movements and decisions on which way what kind of action you're going to take and which way you're going to go. And with all of this Capricorn energy at hand here, we're thinking about what's practical. What is the long-term goal? What do we really need to focus on that's going to lay a strong foundation for us going into the future? And something might come along and disrupt that determination, that work that we're doing, and sort of force us to move something along very quickly. And so the choice is do I actually do that? Do I continue with this? Or is something, is there a break here? Like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Those are the kind of things we might need to be deciding. So, with all of this Capricorn energy, I'll go back to the Capricorn energy because there's a heavy, heavy influence of Capricorn in our charts. And so we are working on something. And it could be, Capricorn ruled by Saturn. All of this Capricorn here is ruled by Saturn in Pisces, which is creating a sextile. So whatever we're determined to achieve, or we're committing to, or we're working on, we have some support here from Saturn because there is a sextile to all of the Capricorn energy. So we have the support if we actually reach out for it to be guided in the right direction, to do the right thing, to consider how we're feeling about something, right? To sort of stay on track towards our goals. So if there's something pressuring us, or there's some kind of emotional, feeling of I've got to move something forward, we've got the sextile from the practical Capricorn energy that we're dealing with to the ruler Saturn in the sign of Pisces. If we choose to just, no matter what's going on, keep our eye on the prize, right? The long-term goal here. And if we if we are thinking about that and using that Saturn and Pisces energy to sort of keep us grounded in what it is that we're trying to achieve, then there's a chance that a situation that might come up might be less destructive than it otherwise could have been if we didn't try and, stay in a place where cooler heads prevailed, right? It's sort of like, just keep your eye on the prize is sort of what I think about here. And we could be on the giving end of this, right? The person that is dealing with that type of energy, or we could be the person that's receiving that, right? Which means that, if we're on the other side of all this Capricorn energy, we might feel like people are directing us to do some things, that we have obligations and responsibilities that we have to stay on task with, right? And that could be trying our patience. Determination, right? Determination and looking at the long-term effects is what will actually help at this point, depending on what's going on in your life. But we have, to break it down a little bit more specifically, we have Mercury and Mars that are pretty much conjunct here in this full moon. And Mercury is what we're thinking and what we're talking about. And Mars is how we're taking action. And in the sign of Capricorn, that's very practical and determined. Sometimes it can be very much cut and dry. That this is the focus. This is what my intent is. This is what I'm working towards, and I'm just doing it. And Mercury Mars is trining the planet Uranus in the sign of Taurus, which is still retrograde for a couple more days. So, as hard as we might be working to create some kind of change and vision for the future, just like when Jupiter was retrograde, Uranus being retrograde, we may not be seeing it yet, but we could be feeling it, because with Uranus, especially as it gets ready to station, we could be feeling that underlying feeling of, there's change coming, right? There's change in the air, but it just hasn't happened yet. And staying focused on the goal and whatever it is that you're learning or thinking about or planning, whether that be writing or speaking, and how you're taking action towards that, is we could be feeling that there's a change coming as a result of that, or hoping that there's going to be, or that our vision will be realized. Uranus is going to turn direct, and that Uranus gives us, it can like move things, solid things. It can make the ground shake underneath the situation or the work that we're doing, and create an environment where things are going to move forward very, very quickly. So if you're feeling like things aren't moving, or materializing the way you'd like them to, no matter how hard you're working, hang on a little bit, because you might see a break in the action, something moving forward very quickly. This Uranus in the sign of Taurus, and I looked at the degree, the Sabian symbol absolutely describes something moving together at warp speed, like very, very fast. Now, the other side of that is if there's a frustrating situation, or something that you're trying to work towards, or that somebody is instructing you and telling you, hey, you have to do, the trine there to Uranus can create a change very quickly that may have been impulsive, or could possibly not be the direction that you want to go, or it can give you the sort of oomph and the push to actually make that change. So in the sign of Capricorn, Mars, that can be cutting out things because it's going, it's on a mission. And Mercury communication, like things could be said and things could be done very abruptly that change things, move things forward, or cut things off completely, because Uranus coming into play. When we see Uranus transits, we see things change very rapidly, and we can see things actually cut off, and there can be separation from things. Now, if that's something that you need to do and you haven't been able to do it, this is a good time to make that happen. But again, cautious and slow and keeping your mind on the long-term goal is going to benefit you in the long run, right? So again, cooler heads prevail. But this Mercury Mars conjunction can really get things moving. And it's kind of like when I look at this Mercury Mars conjunction in the sign of Capricorn, whether we're on the receiving end or the giving end, it's like again, it's very determined and it wants a tangible result. And it can kind of be in the face of some kind of disagreement or an opposition or something that we're having to negotiate or balance out. It could kind of be like, no, this is what I'm doing. I said what I said, right? Very clear, very cut and dry. I said what I said. Going back to the example of, being told maybe by your employer that it's time, you have to move now. You're getting a message. Suddenly it's time to work. You no longer working at home. We have to come back to the office. And I'm using that example because I'm reading about those things happening in corporations all over the place, right? It's like either you come back to work or else, right? It's like I said it and that's the way it is, right? There's going to be a change and we need to move. You have to decide, am I going to go with the group? Am I going to go with what makes me feel good, right? Am I going to express myself and negotiate something that works best for both sides? Or am I going to, Leo can go into this place where it's like, I want what I want. And when it's emotionally feeling pushed and it's not ready to be pushed, there can be some very intense, dramatic sort of tantrum, like almost responses to feeling controlled by something, right? So this could be coming up in so many different ways, but important again to keep your mind on what it is you're trying to accomplish in the long run. If you don't know or you're in a bad situation, reach out to some kind of authority, somebody that will be a mediator of some sort. This is a perfect thing, but you actually have to reach out and ask for help and use that Saturn to support all of this Capricorn. We have Venus in Capricorn as well. Venus in Capricorn is very practical when it comes to how it's going to spend money, what it's going to choose to love, what it values. It wants something tangible. And so Venus here is coming up just behind this Mercury and Mars. And so just so much Capricorn energy focused on our work and our long-term goals and what we're committed to. And so it's all about value. It's all about determination, stamina, and strength. And we somehow are needing to potentially have to learn how to cope with that and digest it in a way that makes us feel seen and heard. And sometimes that can be hard depending on the situation that we are in. Now, this Mercury and Mars is also trining, or I'm sorry, it's not a trine. Take that back. It's a square. Mercury, Mars, right? What we're thinking and what we're saying and what we're planning and how we're taking action is squaring the North Node and Chiron in the sign of Aries, where we really need to set out on our own, think about ourselves, make things happen, and create movement that is going to benefit us and what it is that we're trying to do or what we're trying to heal. The North Node in Aries is about going it alone and doing our own thing and creating our own reality, right? And healing our expression of Aries. And so this Mars in Capricorn, I talked about this in the last video, is very strong when it's working with the North Node in Aries. So it can be very practical and very driven and success oriented. But with the square to the nodes and the Mercury there, it's like we are being put in a position potentially where we have to make that decision. And the decision is, am I going to do what I want? Am I going to consider myself first? Am I going to do that with dignity and with grace? Am I going to make sure that my Aries expression is a positive expression, right? Can I detach from the situation, Aquarius, enough to make sure that I'm not expressing anger or impulsiveness, but that I'm simply taking the direction and the action that is going to be best for me and what's going to make me happy. That Mars rules this Aries energy that is transiting in the chart for all of us, right? And it is squaring the nodes. The Mercury Mars is squaring the nodes. So this so it's like it's at the bend. It's a point where we have to make a transition and choose to move forward into a new expression, a new Aries positive and direction, or if we're going to stay back and relive or redo something in the past. South Node, Libra, relationships, right? We also have Venus up there ruling the South Node in Capricorn. So this nodal axis is relying right now on the movement and the thought process and the plans and the work that's going on in the Capricorn area of our chart. And it might be necessary to revisit past behaviors or past relationships to something that was of value, right? What was of value to us? Saturn very much can represent the past and endings, and definitely Saturn and Pisces. And so how do we balance out our prior expressions or situations that we've been in the past with where it is we want to go in the future? A lot of times when we have planets that are squaring the nodes, we have to consider the past to move into the future. We have to go back into the past to move in a healthy way towards the future. So that square to the nodes should be having us in a place where we are thinking about how we're going to move forward based on the past into what we want in the future. So there's a choice point here that the nodes of the moon are calling our attention to, saying, oh, this is a critical point. What you say and what you do is going to make a difference in this particular period of time. And Venus, of course, like I said, ruling the South Node, this is what is of value, very practical. What do I love and what do I value? And how do I want to create value in my life, whether that has to do with creating a strong financial position or a strong relationship that's going to be based on Saturnian type things, which is foundational strength. And again, making sure that we're building something that's going to last into the future. We might be wanting to fall back on the things that we knew were strong, right? We could be thinking about that with Venus. What was strong? All of this Capricorn energy should be helping us to lean towards the more mature expression of what it is that's going on during this full moon and this opposition where we're having to balance something out emotionally. This Capricorn is like, think about the past, think about the future. What is the foundation? Be practical and mature, right? This is requiring us to be as mature as possible. Or I think if we are with the sextile to Saturn, we'll be supported more in that type of action, right? So very interesting full moon here that could be intense. It could be super emotional. The moon in Leo is very, very emotional. And it does want to be seen and it does want to be heard and it does want to be set aside from the crowd. So what are we having to decide? Are we having to decide whether we're going to challenge what everybody else is doing. We're going to step back from that. We're going to express what it is that we want. We might be moving into a different direction. What we probably don't want to do is let things get out of hand and butt heads with the wrong crowd. I mean, Pluto conjunct the sun is telling us, be careful, right? There could be dangerous roads ahead. And, Pluto has a tendency to wipe things out. And we may not exactly see where that's coming from if we're not engaged in that, part of the situation. So, Pluto conjunct the sun, maybe we do want to be careful and cautious about how we express ourselves, but nonetheless, I think there's going to be a lot of people that really need to feel like they have a say and that they're being seen and recognized in some way. All of that is Leo. It represents younger people. It represents, people that are creative. It represents children. There could be something going on with children. Like I said, this opposition very much represents peer pressure in some way. And then the square to Jupiter is like, well, which way are you going to grow, right? Which way are you going to go? And can things get bigger, or can we keep them under control with all of this Capricorn energy? I'd like to hear what is going on with all of you guys during this full moon in Leo. Definitely a good way to is like, if you're feeling like you want to have fun and you want to express yourself, absolutely do that. Take advantage of that with this full moon in Leo. It can be very, very fun. We can fit into a group if we so choose, and then separate. It's just sort of like, how do we mix and mingle with one another? Or are we going to choose to make ourselves happy and stay out of the crowd? It kind of depends, but it definitely is, if we can balance it out and negotiate how we're feeling versus how everybody else is feeling. It can be very, very fun, and it can be very social. So that is this full moon. I don't think that I forgot anything that I wanted to talk about. The trine to Uranus and Uranus going direct could really show as a big change coming. So when it comes to your relationships or a work deal, negotiation, something potentially financial, things could move very, very quickly. So right now, strategy, detail, and hard work and sort of taking the high road is going to be really important, but good time to step up and definitely express yourself and see if you can negotiate something with the group. Or if you're the group that's pressing, like if you're the one that has a control, maybe see if you can balance out giving somebody else their accolades, right? Or their recognition in some way. That would be helpful. Oppositions are all about balance. Full moons are about culmination. So what's been going on? Is something coming to a head? Are you feeling like you have to move in one direction or another? Are you feeling controlled by something? Are you feeling that you need to speak up around something? Those are all things that could be coming up right now during this full moon. So good luck to everybody, right? Definitely Aquarius is in Leo placements, and in the early degrees, anywhere from 0 to 7 degrees of Leo and Aquarius are going to feel an opposition, which might have you in a negotiating place. And if you are Scorpio, or you have Scorpio placements, or Taurus, where Jupiter and Uranus are sitting, you're going to be experiencing squares. So this is where things shift, right? And with the fixed signs, sometimes shifts are very difficult to deal with, right? And sometimes when those shifts occur in fixed signs, it's like they're permanent a lot of times, or they can be painful, right? They're things that, fixed signs don't like to move. So when you're feeling those squares, when the fixed signs are feeling squares, and, unfortunately the fixed signs have been feeling squares for quite some time now, these can be really big, tectonic types of situations that could be positive, right? Or they could, not feel positive, but maybe in the long run, it was something that needed to change for our own good. Sometimes we don't want to move and change unless something comes along and forces our hand to make a decision or make a change, or sometimes that happens outside of ourselves, which is a lot of what that Uranus can represent, right? Uranus will come along and change things for us sometimes when we were otherwise having trouble making those decisions on our own. And it can kind of pull the rug out from under us and take us by surprise a little bit. So, yeah, those 4 signs, they might definitely be feeling something. As likewise, those 4 signs, if there are placements in the early degrees, 0 to 5 or 7 degrees, are probably going to feel this ingress of Pluto into Aquarius a little bit more strong, much more strong and stronger. I don't know. Oh, now see my words. They're going to feel it a little bit more intensely and notice it a little bit more in their lives if you have, or if they have placements in fixed signs 0 to 7 degrees. If anything like that's going on for you as Pluto's ingressed into Aquarius and as you're experiencing this full moon, let me know. I'd like to know if anything has happened. I'm going to stop the share here if I can figure out in this new stuff. Yes, stop the share. Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let me know how this full moon shakes out for you. What's going on? Are you experiencing any kind of changes or any kind of conflicts or oppositions? Are you a little bit unsure about what you need to say next or do next? Are you feeling a little bit, not recognized, right? It should be interesting. There are so many things I thought about when it came to this full moon, and it was like, we have the Oscars coming up, and Leo very much represents famous people, kings and queens and people that are out there in the spotlight. And it's like, we've got the Oscars coming up, and we have, I think there's going to be some surprises, right? And some people that are actually getting some recognition for some really good collective work in film. One film that comes to mind is Killers of the Flower Moon. And I don't know if you haven't seen it, you might want to take a look at it, but it really addresses the lives of the indigenous people and how the government had power and control over their lands and their communities, and how certain people stepped up to actually create change. And the actors and the actresses that were in that movie, obviously there were some famous people like Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio, but there were some up and coming rising stars from the tribe, right? The culture that the film was about, and Native American culture, that actually participated in this film, in the acting of this film. And I think they're going to get some recognition. I think for them, getting that recognition, even if it's just for a film, kind of carries on far beyond just themselves and just the movie, but actually brings recognition to the group, to their communities, their people within the collective, right? Aquarius, Leo. So that's one thing I think that when we're talking about how things are going on a collective basis, I think is important message for our community and how we recognize people and one another. And then of course there are a lot of different things, when we're talking about Leo and Aquarius, talking about people rising up and entering into the political races. Aquarius very much represents politics, and Leo represents the recognition, stepping into the limelight. It might signify that we're going to have younger people come into, because Leo represents younger people coming into the political arena, and sort of like seeing Pluto kind of get rid of a lot of the older types of traditions and people that have been in politics for the longest time. That could be something that we might see And, people like me trying to learn technology, Aquarius, right, to become part of the group so that maybe I can present my astrology in a little bit more, yeah, you know, updated kind of way. Oh, the Sabian symbol, updated. That made me remember. Okay, let's take a look at the Sabian symbol before we sign off here. Very important. Of 5 degrees Leo, we rounded up 6 degrees Leo, and 6 degrees Leo in Sabian symbol is an old-fashioned woman and an up-to-date girl. Keyword is contrast. The theme, something old, something new, something shared. This symbol speaks to the function and purpose of role play in the everyday world. The image of an old-fashioned woman and an up-to-date girl dramatizes opposites, and it emphasizes the importance of learning to cooperate and look at life from the reverse or flip side of things. Here, conservatism, maturity, tradition, and established values of the past are contrasted with liberalism, youth, innovation, and formative values. The implication of competing impulses to both stand still and move forward, the Mars-Saturn effect. And we do have, Mars in the sign of Capricorn just before, just kind of fueling into this full moon, but also all of the Capricorn sextiling Saturn and Pisces. So there is a Mars Saturn thing here going on. The implication of competing impulses to both stand still and move forward, Mars Saturn, provides a stimulus for each side to look behind surface appearances for common ground on which to come together in mutual appreciation of what each side has to offer. Positive, at its highest, this symbol represents accomplishment through cooperation and creative use of the opinions and values of others. Negative would be in your face, self-assertions, or fear of confrontation and change. Today, the accent is on disparity and contradiction. The challenge is on finding ways to preserve those things of the past that have maintained their value while supporting whatever holds promise for the future. Opportunity would be your greatest advantage lies in being sensitive to the feelings and needs of those who may be in conflict. Focus on commonly shared goals and ideas and find ways to cooperate. Guard against throwing the baby out with the bath by insisting on a complete purge or break with the past. It doesn't have to be either or. And that's the balance, right? In this full moon is like, is it me or is it the group, right? What's Jupiter going to do? Is it going to blow it out of proportion? Is it going to cut something off? Did I need to do that? Am I going to be sorry for it later? Or did it need to happen, right? It can work depending on your situation in either way or many different ways. Stepping stones would be contrast, difference, discrepancy, disparity, contradiction, conflict, disagreement, deviation, opposites, dissimilarity, distinction, divergence, variety, stimulation. So there we go. An old woman and an up-to-date girl. So I kind of could say that applies to me, right? It's like, how do you teach old dogs new tricks? Well, when it comes to technology, in my experience, you just sit down and you just drive towards it, and you're just determined. And if you fall, you get back up. And if you have a blooper or an oops, you just say, well, that's part of the learning process. But really, in an opposition like this, when we're talking about our needs and our moods and our feelings, Leo, to be recognized and seen and heard, and the opposition to the group, which we could feel a little bit pushed by, with Pluto being there, with the sun and the sun in Aquarius, is how do we balance? How do we compromise? How do we give attention and recognition to both sides? How do we handle it respectively while still moving forward with our own work and our own goals, and create strong foundations? So this is about compromise, right? It's about teaching old dogs new tricks and figuring out how to come to an agreement in some way that suits everybody, right? That's, I think, the idea. That's Leo 5, right? It doesn't always work out that way, but it's something definitely to think about and to strive for. I'm glad I remembered to do that Sabian symbol. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Let me know what you think of the new setup. Comment down below and subscribe if you haven't to. If you want to take a look at your birth chart, my email and my website is down in the description box. And we can talk about Pluto and Aquarius personally for you if you're interested in that. We can look at any kind of transits going on in your chart. You can just learn about your birth chart. Also, we can take a look at a chart with you and somebody else, like a relationship chart. Those are always fun and interesting to take a look at. So if you're interested in a reading, let me know down below and we'll set something up. Otherwise, again, thanks for being here. Happy full moon in Leo. Good luck to everybody out there. And I will see you very, very soon. Take good care. And may the stars forever be in your favor. Bye for now.